The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
And welcome in to another edition of SEC Talk. Happy New Year. It is officially 2024. We ring in the new year, close the book on 2023. We had some amazing two college football playoff games to enter the 2024. Probably the best college football playoff that we've had in a while, I believe. So, but Wade, how you doing? How was your new year?
Yeah, it was a great new year. I spent it down in Florida with my family. We watched football at night, hit the beach during the day. So can't beat that. We had some really good football action yesterday as well. Once I got back in town, watched LSU come back from behind. And then, of course, like you mentioned, that playoff was something else. I mean, say what you want, but the committee set us up for two fantastic matchups.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw what Florida State did, losing 63-3 against Georgia, I've seen like all these Florida State fans on Twitter keep talking about it. It just needs to be put to bed. I mean, if Florida State was in, it probably would have been close. If you would have looked at all defenses, all the offenses too, I just don't think that Florida State would have matched up. If they had Jordan Travis, sure, but without him, I just don't know if they would have been able to beat those teams whenever they were full strength. But today we're going to be doing a season in review, looking back at the 2023 SEC season, especially the bowl games. So let's get right into it. Will probably be a shorter show than usual since we don't have too much to get into. But let's get right into it. As we always do, a reminder: if you have any questions pertaining to SEC football, there's not any more action of SEC football. This season's coming to a close, but we are going to start turning our attention to the 2024 season, which is going to be absolutely insane. I mean, the schedules just get harder, and we get two new teams. One was just in the college football playoff. The other also had a very good season as well. So it's definitely, the future is going to be bright for the SEC. I know this is first time since 2014 that we haven't had an SEC team in the national championship. It's going to feel weird if you're an SEC football fan. The future definitely looks bright for the conference moving forward. All right, let's get into the SEC Fantasy, which is presented by our friends over at Mahler Bros Golf. We're in the new year. If you're trying to upgrade your golf gear, that way you can look good and play good on the course, head on over to MahlerBrosGolf.com and use code BELLYUP. That's all uppercase, and you can receive 15% off for your purchase. Well, we did the draft a couple of weeks ago, and now it's finally time. The bowl games have come to pass. And Wade, why don't you take it away? What we're going to do is we're going to kind of divide this up. We're going to look at your team first. But first, let's go into the non-Year 6 bowl game of how your team did.
Yeah, so these guys did not play yesterday in the college football playoff. They kind of had their games scattered throughout the bowl season. Nussmeier did play yesterday, and he looked very good once he settled in. All of a sudden, that Wisconsin and LSU game turned into a shootout, and it was because of the arm of Garrett Nussmeier. As you recall, I originally picked Jaden Daniels on the show with the caveat that, hey, it might be Nussmeier. Really pleased either way. He put up 395 total yards. Ray Davis for Kentucky, he's a guy who I thought might opt out. He transferred 3 times during his collegiate career, and I mean, let's face it, Kentucky didn't have a ton to play for, but he stuck it out and played for Kentucky. And they almost beat Clemson. They had him on the ropes until there was 40 seconds left in the game. Ray Davis played a big part in that. He scored the go-ahead touchdown for Kentucky before the defense let Clemson win it. But he had 69 yards on the day. Not a bad effort. Clemson's run defense is one of the better ones in the country. I really just went with the overall talent behind Davis, hoping he could break a big run. But he very much was a big part of that game. This felt like a home run pick. I was sitting there watching this one, and I was like, heck yeah, I picked the right guy for SEC Fantasy. Ja'Day Walker put up 137 total yards. That game, Oklahoma State was up big on Texas A&M, but Texas A&M began to rally behind Ja'Day Walker and the third-string quarterback. So a nice effort there for Walker. And then the Tennessee defense had a very good game as expected against Iowa. Under 200 total yards let up, 173. That's just a dominant effort for Tennessee. Probably more of a reflection on Iowa's inability to play offense, but Tennessee did the job.
Hey, Dave, man. I mean, Tennessee's defense, that was the defense to pick. Ja'Day Walker, I saw that stat line too. I bet you were very happy with that. Ray Davis, he had a touchdown this, so if we were playing real fantasy, then you would have gotten more points. But man, Garrett Nussmeier, he started off slow, but really came on. So those are your non-New Year's Six. Let's go on now to your New Year's Six bowl games. Your wide selection that you had, the two Missouri duo, and then you had Ladd McConkey, and then Ole Miss's defense. Woof.
Yeah, so these guys, as you can tell, had a little bit harder of a matchup, versus who they were playing. Brady Cook in Missouri, I mean, I really thought this game with Ohio State was going to be a shootout. I think Tyler saw the shootout potential as well. But it just wasn't that. I mean, both defenses came to play. Ohio State was missing some key pieces, but really put together a good defensive effort. Brady Cook managed the game well, but he only had 194 total yards. He did spark the Missouri offense late as Missouri scored the final 14 points in this ball game and won 14-3. Cody Schrader, he had a good day despite the low score. He put up 128 total yards. As we all know, this offense runs through Cody Schrader, and he had a really good game, doing what I expected from Missouri. Ladd McConkey, I expected more out of him with some of the opt-outs and no Brock Bowers for Georgia. I mean, Georgia put up 63 points, and McConkey had just 49 yards, and I think 25 of that came on a rush. So he really just wasn't involved as a pass catcher in this one. But he did put a good end to his Georgia career, getting a touchdown and 49 yards. He declared for the NFL draft yesterday. And this is where it gets ugly. Ole Miss defense, 510 yards let up. I didn't really know where to go with this pick. It was either going to be Missouri or Ole Miss. Missouri would have been the good pick in hindsight, but felt like I had to get the Rebs on the show some. But yeah, I should have taken Jackson Dart and the Missouri defense. That would have been the winning combination. So that's going to sting a little bit. Luckily, Nussmeier went off, and Tennessee, let up 170 yards. So if you combine the Tennessee and the Ole Miss defense, that's about two standard defensive efforts.
Hey, as you can see, it's very hard and challenging to hit on not only one SEC defense, but two SEC defenses, as you picked one of the best ones and then probably one of the worst ones. I mean, Ole Miss's defense played well. I mean, I know that Nick Singleton went off, but allowing only 25 points to that Penn State offense, the Michigans of the world and Ohio States of the world pretty much did the same as well. So you got to tip your cap up for Ole Miss in that game. Really phenomenal season, and Cody Schrader finishing off a phenomenal collegiate career with the Missouri Tigers. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and look at your final score and how your team did. And yes, you did get into the positives, 289. How do you think about that score?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's respectable. We did have double the players, but like you mentioned, that's double the risk on defense. So that's where it usually comes back to haunt you. So 289, that's respectable. I had, one quarterback score really high and one score really low, and same thing on defense. So it all balances out, and I think that that's a competitive score, but let's see how your guys did.
Yeah, very respectable score. We'll see if it holds up. Let's go on now to my selections of the non-New Year's Six. As you can see, Ole Miss's defense wasn't the only one that struggled. As you can see there on your right portion of the screen, my defense did not do good as well. But Devin Leary, quarterback for Kentucky, he had 306 yards, but he had -5 yards on the rushing, so I had to dock him for that. But still a very good game. I did not expect the Clemson and Kentucky game to really finish 38-35. It looked like a game that Clemson was going to dominate early on, but Devin Leary really connected with Dane Key. We really saw Dane Key in this one, but 301 yards for Devin Leary. You didn't really see too much of Jarquez Hunter as Auburn just continued to fizzle out, especially at the end of the season. They had their miracle against them happen against Alabama, and then you had a month to prepare. and just an absolute beatdown by the Terrapins. So congratulations to Maryland on that. But Auburn, definitely a rough stretch for them to end this season. And Jarquez Hunter only getting 51 yards. I mean, he has to get over 100 for Auburn to even win this game. And then Malik Neighbors, he had 23 yards. He pretty much just got the raker and said, all right, I'm done. Brian Kelly pretty much just sat him down. So nothing really could do there. If I would have picked Brian Thomas Jr., then I definitely would have been cooking. Then LSU's defense, we all know them about this season. They have just been flat out abysmal this whole entire year. 506 yards to a Wisconsin offense that only scored 11 touchdowns, and they had 5 of them on last afternoon. So 506 yards. So you thought that Ole Miss's defense is bad with 510, 506 against Wisconsin. That's pretty pathetic. We'll see.
Basically, those cancel each other out.
Yeah, pretty much. So we'll see if there's any defensive coordinator changes or not. We'll have to see what Brian Kelly does and his staff. So let's go on now to my New Year's 6 selection on my version of my team. Let's go towards the quarterback, and I should have picked Jackson Dart too. Jalen Milroe did not have that great of a game. If you really saw that game, I feel like more than times than not, somebody was in the backfield with Michigan. I mean, their defensive coordinator had an outstanding game plan. Run a quarterback spy on Jalen Milroe, bring pressure. He can't do anything. I mean, this Alabama offense was inept at times, 179 yards, 63 of those coming on the ground, which is definitely surprising of how many times he got sacked. But Quinshon Judkins was definitely the running back to pick here. I mean, you got Cody Schrader, you got Quinshon Judkins. Judkins had himself a game against Penn State's defense, who came into the game ranked number 1 overall in defense. But Ole Miss's offense really had their ways against Penn State, 120 yards. Luther Burden third. Like I mentioned, I thought that this was going to be more of a high-scoring shootout, more for Missouri, but only 14 points. So Luther Burden, not too much of a factor. He did get a touchdown, so that I guess that's lagniappe at this point, but 35 yards. Georgia defense, 209 yards. Outside of Missouri's defense, Georgia defense was the one to pick in the New Year's 6. So let's see if I stay in the positives and contend with you. As you can see, not even close. -6. Where I got hurt was definitely the LSU defense and really my non-New Year's 6. With Malik Neighbors not having a great game, not really even playing that game hardly. And then with Jarquez Hunter not having a great game either. So that's where he beat me. I mean, your non-New Year's 6, you had Ja'Day Walker had himself a game. So congratulations. You win not only the fantasy football championship of one of our leagues, but you also win the SEC Fantasy Bowl. So this is definitely always fun to do. A lot of high stakes, but the score for this one is Wade won this one 289 to -6. Like I mentioned in the pre-show, not much of a game here. It's an absolute runaway. So
we will be back next year with SEC Fantasy, and I think we can revamp it with the 16 teams coming up. Yeah. We can come up with ways to include all the teams, rotate the players better. We might factor in touchdowns. We don't want to be doing too much math on the weekends, but we do want to keep continuing this product because I think it is a good staple of the show.
Yes, we will have more players and teams involved with Texas and Oklahoma join the conference, so that's always an exciting time. Now with that, let's go ahead and close the book on this college football and SEC season with our SEC football bowl game recap, which is presented by our friends over at SeatGeek. If you want to get any tickets for any of the games, if you have the money to go to the national championship, then go for it. If you're going to do it, use SeatGeek. But use
our promo to get 10% off.
Yeah, get 20% off. You
20% off. You're going to need it.
Yeah, you get 20% off of your first purchase. The NFL, they got the playoffs coming, and then NBA season is on the way, and then college basketball is really getting heated up with conference play beginning this week. So let's get into a quick recap. We won't spend too much time here. We'll just breeze through all these bowl games. But in the TaxAct Texas Bowl, we had Texas A&M versus number 20 Oklahoma State. Very tough times for Texas A&M. They only had like 50 scholarship players on the roster. I mean, there's going to be some roster turnover with Jimbo Fisher being out the door, Mike Elko coming in. And also their third-string quarterback, their freshman, got hurt in this one. So they had to go down into the dumps to find a quarterback. Oklahoma State, they were able to control this first half, but you got to give credit to Texas A&M. But it's always hard when, especially with you had that roster turnover to win a football game. But gotta love the fight that Texas A&M showed, especially in the second half and into the fourth quarter. But Oklahoma State too much. Ollie Gordon once again ran hog wild as Oklahoma State started off this one. The SEC dropped their first bowl game of the season. So I want to spend some time here. Mike Elko is going to be coming into the mix. What are your expectations, for Texas A&M moving into first year under, former head coach Mike Elko?
I think it was a good hire in the end, and I think Texas A&M will continue to recruit really well, especially on the defense. So I don't expect them to fall apart, but there will be a little bit of a rebuild next year. I mean, they did lose a lot of experience to the transfer portal, but Mike Elko is going to go bring in some guys as well. It remains to be seen what this team's going to do at quarterback. If Connor Wise, is it Wiseman?
Yeah,
Wagner. If he's going to still be the guy next year, I think as of now, yes, but we'll have to see how he bounces back from the injury. But yeah, I see this team being a middle of the road SEC team. I think that they are probably worse than the two teams joining, so that just kind of pushes them down just a notch.
Yeah, although it's probably going to take a couple of years, but I definitely think Mike Elko is the right hire, and this team and program is definitely going to be heading in the right direction. But it's definitely going to be tough, with a 12-team playoff. You can afford a 2-loss or a 3-loss. Fans, whenever you get the first loss, you're just like, damn, our season's over. But now, whenever you get that first loss, it's like, okay, we can afford at least one more. So that's definitely going to be a change going into the next season. Let's move on now to the next bowl game that we had in the conference. And the conference didn't start off so hot as the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl, another tax bowl. Number 22 Clemson won this one 38-35 in a high scoring shootout. I mean, you had 2 kickoff returns for a touchdown. You had pretty much everything. I mean, Clemson's running back really went off in this one. I mean, Kentucky, you saw, in the SEC fantasy review that Devin Leary had himself a game here as Clemson ended up winning this one. Kentucky, don't really know what to really evaluate this program. I feel like every year Kentucky's either like 6-0 or 5-0. Look at their schedule a couple of weeks ago. I just don't see that. I think that this is going to be a team that starts off slow. So it's definitely going to be really key of how Kentucky can face some adversity. So Kentucky obviously losing Devin Leary. We'll see if they add any more transfer portal additions. You'll probably be losing Ray Davis as well. So there's going to be some key pieces in this offense. So it's definitely going to be tough for Kentucky moving forward in the SEC East. Not in the SEC East. It's going to be the SEC as a whole because the divisions are no longer going to be here. But SEC, as you can see, started off 0-2 in the bowl season. Let's move on now to the next bowl game. Like I mentioned, we won't spend too much time. I mean, these games were a couple of days ago, not really fresh on our minds. But a big one here. The SEC finally got in the win column. It had to be the Missouri Tigers to do it. Number 9, Missouri, and number 7, Ohio State clashed in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. 14-3, a somewhat surprising score here. I mean, Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr. Was out in this one. Obviously, we know that Kyle McCord, he transferred to Syracuse. The backup, they got hurt, so they went to their third-string quarterback. Brady Cook in this offense really struggled for 3 quarters, and then you saw in the fourth quarter, Cody Schrader, he got that touchdown, and the Luther Burden touchdown as well was pretty much the difference in this. But I want to spend some time as a whole. Missouri, like I mentioned, we didn't really talk much about them. We thought that they were going to be middle in the road SEC team, maybe finish 3rd or 4th in the SEC East. They finished 2nd, finished off 11-2, and some good news if you're a Missouri Tiger fan. Eli Drinkwitz is now your coach. He's inked a contract extension to 2028, so that's definitely some good news. So I know that you and I were definitely high on this Missouri team as the season goes on. So really, what impressed you about this Missouri team in 2023?
I just think the offensive leaps that they made were really impressive. We knew they had Cody Schrader coming back, but he really stepped up his game this year, as did Brady Cook. I mean, they brought in Jake Garcia from Miami to challenge him. I mean, Garcia kind of made that move, I think, because he saw an open job. Well, Brady Cook and kept his job and played really well. Luther Burden, kind of disappointed as a true freshman last year. He was a 5-star recruit, people thought he was going to come in and have instant success. I kind of want to say he had his Jamar Chase moment this year where he really became the focal point of an offense that was explosive all year round in his sophomore campaign. So much like Jamar did. So, yeah, I just think what they did on offense and then defensively, they really did hold their own. I mean, look, they held the number 7 team here in the country to 3 points. I know that Ohio State was without Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison Jr., but Kyle McCord's a guy they kicked to the curb. So theoretically, they had a quarterback they liked better suiting up for him, and Harrison can't do it all. So I think Missouri was destined to win this game no matter what, and I think they're going to be very good next year as well. I would pencil them in the top 4, right up there with Ole Miss and Alabama and Georgia next year.
And they're definitely going to be a team to watch. A very good season.
Maybe fifth.
All right. Maybe top 4, top 5. That's definitely respectable in a conference. That's definitely going to be loaded next year. So great win for Missouri. Let's move on now. That's not the only New Year's Six game that the SEC was involved in. We'll move on now to the next one that they were involved in. Ole Miss, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Really dominant win here. Number 11, Ole Miss, 38. Won this one against number 10, Penn State, 25. It was a clean sweep. If you watched a couple of weeks ago, we all picked Ole Miss. We were definitely on the money with this one. Jackson Dart, he is announcing his return. I mean, Ole Miss, if you're looking for a team to watch in the SEC, I mean, look what they're doing, the transfer portal, the recruiting trail. The Lane train is going to be cooking going into next season. I think that they're going to be a top 5 preseason. I think that you can, record me all you want. I just think that this is going to be a team that's going to be one of the preseason favorites to not only make it to the SEC championship, but I think win the SEC. I think they're going to be that good next year. I think that their schedule really sets up nicely. I know their really big challenge early on will be going on the road to LSU, and then outside of that, you get Georgia at home. You don't have to face off against Alabama. That's this year, so that's always good news. But this was really about Ole Miss's offense really finishing what they started. I mean, Trey Harris, he's an absolute baller. Quinshon Judkins, he's going to be coming back. I mean, the tight end got involved too. Pearson, he had himself a game, 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards in this one. So are you drinking the Kool-Aid as I am, as on this Ole Miss team moving forward?
Yeah, I think that they're going to be really good next year too. That Lane Kiffin's making some moves in the transfer portal, but they got it done to close out this year's bunch, and it was a really impressive win. I'm puzzled as to how they let up 500 total yards of offense, but it didn't matter. They got it done. They won by double digits when they were the underdog in this game. So it was a really good effort for Ole Miss. Jackson Dart is coming back. He showed kind of his most complete football game of the year, maybe other than the LSU game. So I think he's a good leader. They have some other good quarterback talent on their roster, and they might look to bring somebody else in. So I don't think by any stretch of the imagination the job is guaranteed. He'll have to battle and win it in the spring. But I think he will, and I think this team will be really good. Judkins is coming back too. He's only a sophomore.
Yeah, 11-win season. I mean, this is a lot of momentum building for this Ole Miss program heading into the 2024 season. So let's move on now. The SEC start off slow, but now we're 2-2. And then we go from one good game to a bad game. Maryland really schooled Auburn in this one in the Music City. I did not expect this one at all. Chet did. He picked the Terps to win this one, but you and I picked Auburn in this one. Feel confident in them, but Maryland 31-13. I thought with no Talia Tagovailoa, Maryland wouldn't be able to generate any offense. Nope. I mean, Maryland putting up 31 points. Auburn definitely a disappointment the past couple of weeks. A game that they had their grasp and they did not sit anybody against Jalen Milroe, and then you have a month to prepare, and then your offense is pretty much non-existent. I just don't know what's to really think of what direction this program is heading. I just don't know. But I'm just going to go ahead. What do you think about this Auburn team moving forward? I mean, this was definitely a disappointing season for them.
Yeah, no doubt. Not how we thought they would finish. Auburn got some momentum late. They beat Arkansas pretty handily. They got the win over Mississippi State in a slugfest, and then they had Alabama on the ropes. Could have really changed the trajectory of the college football playoff with a win there. I thought that they would probably beat Maryland without Tua Tagovailoa's younger brother Talia playing, but nonetheless, Maryland comes in with the backup quarterback and wins this one by double digits. So not the finish you want with your Auburn. Help is on the way. They've been active in the transfer portal, but I think to secure some recruits coming in February, a win would have gone a long way for Auburn, but they're going to have to get some new guys in here and scheme around them, because this team could be in danger of falling well into the back half of the SEC now that there's more teams being added.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be challenging. Yeah, Auburn had some puzzling games this year. This one, the LSU game, where they really didn't even care to show up, it looked like. I mean, LSU really had their way in that game, but we'll see if Auburn can turn the page and have a better season. I mean, 6-7 under your first year under Hugh Freeze. I mean, Hugh Freeze had a lot of expectations. You had success against Ole Miss. Auburn definitely has a lot of resources to build a really, good program and make it elite. So we'll see how he does in year number 2. Moving on in the bowl season for the conference, we'll see if they can bounce back with a victory. And yes, they did. The Georgia Bulldogs absolutely thumped Florida State. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's opt-outs and transfers on both sides. So all this Florida State crap that I'm seeing on Twitter, I'm honestly over it at this point. Number 6, Georgia, 63. Number 5, Florida State, really nothing to talk about in this one. Georgia put the hammer down and pretty much silence any talk that Florida State should have been in the playoff. But
if anything, Georgia should have been in the playoff.
Yeah, Georgia should have been in the playoff, honestly. The way that they fell from 1-6 for just losing by, a couple of points to Alabama. I mean, there's not really a team that you would have replaced them with. You can't replace Michigan. You're not going to be replacing Texas. You're not going to be the only team that you could replace them with Alabama, but Alabama beat them head to head. So I just don't know what you could have done in that scenario.
Why we're going to 12.
Yep, that's why we're going to 12 teams. But nothing really saying this one. Absolute dominating performance of Georgia. Georgia ain't going anywhere, people. I mean, they're losing Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, but they did get Carson Beck back. This defense is still going to be elite. So look for Georgia to once again to be back in the conversation, to be back in Atlanta and into the college football playoff. I mean, I think they're going to be a lock, especially that we're going to the 12-team playoff. It's hard to see this team, but in September, they get an early test. They don't get any cupcakes. They get at Alabama, and that might be a preview of the SEC championship. We will see. But absolute dominating performance against Georgia. They took a page out of Geno Smith's team when West Virginia put up 77 against the Clemson Tigers a couple of years ago. Had to do that to you. I mean, that's the last time that I saw this many points. I mean,
63
Baltimore
in the Orange Bowl.
The Baltimore Ravens put up 56 on Miami. So tough to be affiliated with the Miami area. But Georgia won this one 63-3. Absolute dominating performance by the Dogs. Let's move on now to the next game here of the slate. This was, I guess you could say this was a surprising shootout, but if you know LSU's defense, they're going to get anybody into a shootout, especially Wisconsin's offense. But LSU rallied in this one. Wisconsin was up by as much as 14 in this one. They went out to a 14-0 lead. It was the same old LSU defense. They couldn't stop a nosebleed if they tried, especially their secondary and their safeties. But Garrett Nussmeier, you got the start in this one. The big story heading into this one was the Heisman Trophy winner, Jane Daniels, opted out in this one. He's preparing for the NFL draft. He was there on the sidelines. Malik Neighbors is now the LSU leading receiver in the program, passing Josh Reed. So congratulations to you, Malik Neighbors. Now you get to go be a millionaire because you're going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. But there was definitely some signs to really like if you're an LSU fan about Garrett Nussmeier. He started off slow, but he really got it cooking in the second half. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr., Kyron Lacey, I mean, those have been the guys this whole entire season. We also saw, Noah Cain get some reps, Josh Williams get some reps at the running back spot. Mason Taylor had himself a game as LSU won this one 35-31. So we know that, this offense is definitely going to be losing a lot of guys. Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors and Jane Daniels are going to be moving on, and now it's going to be Garrett Nussmeier. So how are you feeling about Garrett Nussmeier being, the pretty much the quarterback one moving forward into 2024 season? That's going to start off really, really strong when you have to battle USC and UCLA to start off your season.
Yeah, I feel pretty good with Jaden Daniels handing it over to Nussmeier, I mean, it's a little different offense, but if anything, both have really good deep balls. I mean, Jaden Daniels, I think that's a huge part of his game, but Nussmeier can probably throw it further. The question is whether he can hone it in and make it accurate. And I think you saw that progression during this game. I think that early on he was overthrowing Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, which is kind of hard to do because they're fast and tall. But he settled in and really hit his stride. So I feel good about where the offense is. I think that the assistants can replicate the offense that Denbrock had and tailor it to your quarterback and Nussmeier. I think going into the offseason, you have to really cater the offense around Nussmeier. I don't think that AJ Swan was brought in to be necessarily a contender for the starting job. I think he's a guy with SEC experience that can push Nussmeier, but much like they did with Jaden Daniels, you got to tailor the offense around your star player. And then at running back, I think LSU is only going to get better. You're going to see Caleb Jackson and Trey Hawley take over this backfield. Logan Diggs coming back as well. And defensively, I mean, look, there's nowhere to go but up. I think that it's probably a good thing some of these secondary members are seniors and on their way out. Let's get some new blood in there and maybe even some transfers. So I think LSU is good. I think they're a top half SEC team, but what's keeping them from being in the top 5 is the defense. But I would put them right there at 6 or 7.
I agree with you. We'll see what this can do. I mean, this offense definitely going to be a lot of question marks, and the defense, who knows what it's going to be. We'll see if it can't be any worse than this year. Maybe it can, but we'll see if there's any improvement on that side of the ball. So let's move on now, I believe, to the final game that we saw feature an SEC team, and that was nope. We have 2 more, actually. We forgot about this one, but we won't spend too much time on this one because this wasn't much of a game, as number 17 Iowa once again got blanked this season. I mean, Iowa, their offense is just so bad. I mean, number 21 Tennessee, 35-0. And then we saw the true freshman, Nico. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name. It's just another DJU scenario. I'm just going to call him Nico. But really impressive performance by him. I think that Tennessee is really in good hands with him. Squirrel Wright got involved in this one. Jalen Wright, I don't think I saw him playing this one. Maybe he did, but I didn't really tune in this one, honestly. This was over pretty much by the half. Tennessee's defense really played well, so great win for the Vols. Probably not the season that Tennessee fans had in mind for this season. They had that strong start in Tuscaloosa. That was a game that they could have had, and then Georgia game. I mean, the Georgia game was just over with. But nonetheless, Tennessee finished off a great season. Iowa, to even be in the Big Ten championship, that will probably never happen again, honestly, especially with Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA coming into the dance. And it's probably going to be like Michigan and Ohio State pretty much every year moving forward, honestly. But Tennessee finished off the 2023 season and enters 2024 with a bang, with a shutout victory against the Hawkeyes. Now, let's close it out with our bowl season with the Rose Bowl that we had last night. Or should I say last afternoon, since it was a 4 o'clock game on Central Time. Number 4, Alabama squared off at number 1, Michigan in the Rose Bowl. And the Wolverines are heading on to the national championship as they are the winners, 27-20. And this was a battle of defense here. I mean, also miscues. My gosh, I don't think I've ever seen a playoff game with so many miscues, especially by one team. And that one team ended up still winning the game. I mean, it started off what looked like J.J. McCarthy started off the game with an interception, but thank the Lord that Alabama and Caleb Downs, he was out. I mean, that was just really a tailspin. And then there was a couple of miscues. You had that fumble on the punt, and then in the fourth quarter, you almost had a fumble on the punt that almost resulted in a safety, which it didn't. But this was a back-and-forth game. Alabama, in the end, ended up falling in this one. Don't know what that play call was at the end. I don't know what they were trying to do, maybe an RPO that was busted, because if you watch, like, the center could not snap the ball whatsoever. I mean, it was like
I think it was
low
low,
throws,
yeah.
high throws. Like, I think it was just a busted play. I think the low throw, it was an RPO. If you watch back, they had Roydale Williams go on a little wheel route, and if he caught it, he was going to score the touchdown and tie the football game, but it was a bad snap. and Jalen Milroe pretty much just had to run up the middle, and you can't run up the middle against Michigan's defense. But very good win for Michigan. But overall, what do Alabama, like a couple of months ago, we were just, saying like, what is wrong with this team? And, they made it to the college football playoff. I'm not going to say that this is like a lost season. I think that this was honestly a great season for Alabama with what they went, from the Texas loss to the South Florida performance. I still think, nonetheless, even with the loss, this was still a very good season for Alabama, and they're going to be really good next year too.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this team found its identity, and maybe this was an in-between year for them. I mean, they only graduated 3 guys onto the NFL that are starting for their respective NFL teams. So it's normal to have a cycle where, hey, you don't know what you're going to do at quarterback going into the season. And the guy that you ultimately decide on doesn't run the same offense that Bryce Young or Mac Jones or Tua ran, and that's okay. They went back to more of the offense we saw with Jalen Hurts, and we all know Jalen Hurts has been very successful in the NFL this year. So Nick Saban found what works again with his guy and Jalen Milroe. And this team just ran the ball really well, but Michigan is a team that's really hard to run against. So kind of saw it coming. Michigan was up for the test, and they won. Alabama, I mean, I think this new format suits them very well. It's kind of seemed like in the past, if you beat Alabama once, and maybe that was enough to knock them out of the playoff, or certainly twice. But honestly, if this team knows they can lose 2 games and still make the playoff, I mean, they're going to be one of the most feared opponents year in and year out. I mean, Saban's the kind of guy that I could see him saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and take the week off of preparing for LSU because we really need to beat Texas. And that's going to be okay because you can lose a game or 2.
Yep.
So I just think this team's here to stay, and they're going to be good for a long time.
I think they're probably going to be a lock for the college football playoff for a very long time, as long as Nick Saban
Can't name 12 teams better than them. I'll tell you that.
I don't even remember the last time Alabama's lost 3 games. It's been probably a decade. But tough loss for Alabama, but definitely nothing to hang your head about in this loss. So Michigan, we talked about it on Sports Scramble. I mean, they had to pretty much like 2 consecutive playoffs that they did really a no-show pretty much. In the Georgia game last year, they went down 14-0. This year, they got off to a slow start too, but they were able to really bounce back and win this game in overtime. So that is the bowl season. Let's go ahead and see how the crew picked in this one, the bowl picks. Wade, you ended up taking this one 10-1. I can't remember your lone loss. Oh yeah, it was Auburn.
It was the Auburn game.
Yep, it was the Auburn one. And then 9-2 for both of us. So very impressive. 10-1 and 9-2 and 9-2 for all 3 of us. So way over 500. We definitely like to see that as we close the book on our pick'em results. But we do have one more game to pick, and let's get into the national championship game. I know this is not tied to SEC football, but it is definitely a big game to watch in the college football landscape. The national championship preview is presented by our friends over at Fanatics. They have good deals running, so definitely take advantage of that and use our link down below. All right, let's get into the national championship, which will be kicking off a little after 6:30 on Monday, January 8th. It is the top 2 teams in the country, both undefeated, champions of the Big Ten and the Pac-12. This is going to be 2 Big Ten teams that you'll see next season compete against each other. It is the number 2 Washington Huskies versus the number 1 Michigan Wolverines. Wade, you picked Michigan in the preseason to win it all. Are you going to go with them?
I'm going to stick with my guns here. I think Michigan gets it done. Washington, to me, is more impressive at this moment. But, hey, they kind of flirted with their luck yesterday.
Oh, my gosh.
I thought that Texas was going to sneak in there. I'm not so sure you can do that against Michigan. I think that that's where Michigan beats you, is that, despite all the allegations, they are a very well-coached team, very disciplined. And Michigan, they flirted with their luck too on special teams. So both teams had some fortuitous bounces to get into this situation. I know I was very impressed with Michael Penix and how he played for Washington, but I just think that Michigan's defense is going to be a little bit more disciplined. I think they're going to get a better pass rush on Penix, and I think they're much better in the secondary. Texas really struggled all year long, against both Oklahoma schools and some other high-powered offenses that they faced. They just got picked apart. So I think Michigan's got the guys to match up with that really talented wide receiver room. But I wouldn't be surprised if Washington wins this game. I do think it'll be close. If Washington can assert their offense early, I think they can definitely win this game. But I like J.J. McCarthy and the Wolverines in this one. I'll go 30-27.
I think if you're a college football fan, you're just hoping that the 2024 national championship is just a better football game than the 2023 one, because that was over by the time that the ball was kicked off, honestly. If you're a Georgia fan, obviously you like that one, but if you were doing a watch party for 3 hours, you did not like that one. There was just really nothing to talk about, so hopefully we have better outcome in that one. More details on that will be coming in the coming days. Like you picked Michigan to win your preseason national championship. I'm going to go with the same thing, but I went with Washington. I feel like I was like I don't really see anybody really be high on this team. I was really high on Michael Penix. I picked him to win the Heisman. He was a Heisman finalist. Their top 3 wide receivers, I mean, they are definitely hard to guard, and their defense really had some struggles early on, but that secondary really locked up Texas. I thought it was going to be a runaway. Like, Washington had that drive where they could have went up 21 points.
They could have went up 41-21.
Yeah, they could have went up by 20, and then that injury to Dylan Johnson, I was like, no way that this injury happens and Texas come back and win, and Washington's defense was able to lock down A.D. Mitchell in that last play. I think this is going to be a phenomenal game. I think you brought up a good point. I think that Michigan secondary is definitely better than Texas secondary. Texas secondary definitely has been really look at their strong suit as their defensive line. That secondary had some struggles in those games, especially against Washington. You got to guard their 3 wide receivers. We'll see if Dylan Johnson plays in this one. It looked like an injury that might knock him out of the national championship. So that's definitely some tough news for Washington. But this is still an explosive offense that can score on you. For Washington's side, how the heck are you going to stop Blake Corum and Roman Wilson? I mean, Roman Wilson, he's definitely been the wide receiver number 1. Blake Corum, he's been the dude for Michigan. This is going to be a heck of a game. I'll say 34-31 Washington win this one. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this one. I think that J.J. McCarthy has himself a game too. 2 or 3 touchdowns scored for him. And Chet, I didn't ask him what his national championship pick. I just based it on a couple of weeks ago when we had our Sports Scramble episode, and he picked Washington too. We'll see if that changes, but for now, he is going to go with the Washington Huskies. So that is a tough pick. This is definitely going to be a great game. Honestly, I don't care who wins. I'm just ready to watch one more college football game and hope it's very, very good and not an absolute blowout. So we have one more thing to get into in our season in review show before we close the book on the college football season in the conference. And let's discuss our thoughts first on the 2023 SEC football season. Let's do some team superlatives. We'll go one by one here. What team disappointed your expectations and what team exceeded your expectations in the SEC?
Yeah, I think Missouri's the obvious answer for exceeded my expectations. They went all the way to the New Year's Six and beat Ohio State, which was a team that was in the playoff contention. So definitely the Missouri Tigers for me. Disappointment, I think we've really harked on South Carolina and Florida all year, as well as Arkansas. So pick your poison there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'll go with Missouri too. I mean, I think that you and I have pretty much been on the Missouri train this whole entire year. I'm going to go with Arkansas. I just think that every single year they start off good. It's like Kentucky 2.0. They start off good and but that stretch, man, you cannot lose to BYU at the stretch that you have coming up. You lose to them, and then boom, the wheels just keep falling off. You lose to LSU, you lose to Texas A&M, you lose to Alabama, you lose a stinker to Mississippi State 7-3. That was just the most abysmal performance I've seen in Arkansas for the past couple of years. I think this is a do or die year for Sam Pittman. I think that if he doesn't get to a bowl game, Arkansas is going to cut ties with him. And we're going to see Bob Petrino as interim head coach, which is definitely going to be a fun sight to see for Arkansas fans, maybe. But yeah, Arkansas, South Carolina, and Florida, I can agree with that, being the top 3 disappointment teams in the SEC. Let's move on now to the 2024 season. Let's talk about, what are we looking forward to next season?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I'm just looking forward to, some new matchups. I think ditching the divisions is a cool idea, and I think once that they probably go to the 9-game schedule, I think you'll see more of a true rotation with maybe 3 permanent rivals. So I'm looking forward to the new structure and some new rivalries. It was really fun when Texas A&M and Missouri joined, just to see matchups you don't usually see and teams and stadiums you don't usually see. So I think that's the part I'm looking forward to. And then the new format for the whole college football season too. So I think there's a lot of weird changes going on that I'm not a fan of nationally, but I do like the way the SEC approached it, and I do like the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I think that next college football season, I mean, you got a lot of excitement in the building, both in the real world and the virtual world. The EA Sports College Football will be
That
returning
is true.
in a couple of months. So, I mean, we'll be able to see it early on. Like, we'll honestly be the first goers of, the new college football. We'll see all the new conferences, the 12-team playoff, and all that. So we'll be able to test it out, a couple of months before the season. But yeah, I'm definitely excited for Oklahoma and Texas join the conference. I think that there's a lot of momentum with both of those programs, especially Texas. I think they're going to be really good next year. Oklahoma, I think they're going to be good next year. There's a lot of question marks. Without Dylan Gabriel there, that was definitely a question mark in the transfer portal. He's now moving on to Oregon. But yeah, definitely going to be exciting. We're going to have 2 bye weeks. All the 16 teams will have 2 bye weeks. That'll be something new. So I'm just ready for changes, honestly. Sometimes you just got to change something up that's been working on. So it's definitely going to be exciting. Like you mentioned, you get that 1 loss, you're not too worried. But if you get that, 2 or 3 losses, then you start to worry about, getting out of the 12-team playoff. And that first round matchups, I mean, just imagine the environments. I cannot wait for that. It's a definitely exciting season for the SEC coming up. And that's going to be it for SEC Talk for the 2023 football season. We appreciate everybody for tuning in weekly to our show. It was definitely another exciting season. And we want to congratulate every SEC team, whoever made the bowl game. And we hope that those who didn't can definitely join the party next year. That way we have some more new faces and new teams to pick in our SEC fantasy. So before I close the book and give our goodbyes, Wade, do you have any thoughts on how this season went? And I forgot how many seasons you've been with me on SEC Talk, but what are your overall thoughts on how this year's show went?
I think it just keeps getting better and better. Every time I run into somebody, you're always surprised at who this show reaches, and they say, "Oh yeah, I saw your show on the Facebook feed or the YouTube." So I think it's great that we're cross streaming across all the platforms. I think the interactive format with the slideshow is just great. So it's come a long way, and Tyler puts in the work, guys. I tell you that. So check out all of his content on YouTube, TikTok, here on Facebook. For not only SEC Talk, but his other shows, College Football Coast to Coast and Sports Scramble. So yeah, we're just trying to get good content out there. Stick with us on Sports Scramble. We'll cover the other sports. Baseball season's not too far away, so that's our next venture, especially on the college ranks. But yeah, it's been a great football season, and definitely love doing it with you here on the show. And we will see you guys 2024, new conference layout, new broadcast studio for me, so it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, definitely going to be an exciting time in 2024. SEC Talk will now be entering the off season. The next show won't be honestly around late February and March, whenever the SEC basketball tournament tips off. And then we have our annual March Madness selection show. That's always a treat. I enjoy doing that. And then we'll have some shows, in the college baseball season as well. So there's going to be some shows every now and then, but it won't be as weekly as you see on the football show. But if you want any more content, the Sports Scramble podcast will be returning. I believe Chet said that our return show will be on Sunday. So definitely be tuned into that. We appreciate everybody for tuning in, all the SEC fans. I'm seeing pretty much our following growing on Facebook every single week. So definitely appreciate you guys tuning in, dropping likes on both YouTube and Facebook. So we appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we hope everybody enjoys your happy new year in 2024. For now, for SEC Talk, Wade and Tyler, We appreciate you, and so long.